Are you familiar with FBI Special Agents Kyle Seraphin?
I'm familiar with the name.
Is that yes?
I'm familiar with the name. Familiar with the name. Familiar with the name.
Let's bring in Kyle Seraphin. He's the FBI whistleblower who helped expose government censorship of our First Amendment rights.
Now, we only have this memo because a recently suspended FBI agent called Kyle Seraphin brought it to the public, and we're grateful that he did. Kyle, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
He's the host of something that strangely is called the Kyle Seraphin Show.
Kyle Seraphin, I can't thank you enough for speaking out. I knew you guys were out there, and I knew it was just a matter of time, but you got a lot of guts putting your face and your name to this. You're doing a service on behalf of the American people, and from the bottom of my cracked and broken heart sometimes, thank you very much.
Take a look behind the curtain with a real whistleblower and American patriot. Prepare to embrace the uncomfortable truth because this program has no time for comforting lies. Here is civil liberties enthusiast, Second Amendment defender, and recovering FBI agent Kyle Seraphin.
Well, hello, my friends. Welcome and welcome back to the Kyle Seraphin Show. Today is Monday. It is January the 6th. What a difference 4 years makes. I can't help but think this has been a wild start to 2025. I feel like I've been sitting in this chair for days, probably because I've been sitting in this chair for days. We did a lot of time on social media, which is far more than I'm used to doing on the weekend. And I didn't really feel like I had any control over that. So I had to take a little moment just before we got started, just before the camera panned over to me, and just said a little prayer, just guide my words, because I feel like I'm a little bit more tired than I ought to be on a Monday morning. But here we go. Anyway, here it starts. We're going to get into a ton of information. Like I said, thanks for joining us. If you're joining us over on Rumble, great. Awesome. You're in the chat. I see you guys talking. And as usual, you're fantastic. For those of you that are just joining us on X for the first time, if you started following over the weekend, thanks for joining us. Looking forward to talking to you today. We're going to talk about some GOP politics. We're going to talk about terrorist attacks in New Orleans, some updates from the FBI, some of the nonsense going on there. We're going to talk about the embarrassment the FBI has because they have been embarrassing themselves during these investigations. And they really kind of showed the weakness of the bench for the executive management. I don't think it says as much about the individual agents working, but man, there's a lot to talk about on that. We're going to talk about dunking on Republicans because you'll obviously believe that an ISIS-inspired attack in New Orleans, what it really tells us is Donald Trump's cabinet picks are not worth picking. Yeah, that's predictable stuff coming in from the hard political left. What else? We're going to get into the Cybertruck bombing. Had a lot of stuff go on over the weekend. And as I promised you guys on Friday morning, there was information coming your way. It did, in fact, drop. Sean Ryan did a great job exposing some of the info that was out there that I had a little hand in, a very, very little hand in. But I did help kind of explain it, I think, last night on a Twitter space that was one of the biggest I've ever been on. 30,000+, maybe 35,000 plus folks listening in, and got a really nice note from his producer and from him this morning. So appreciate Sean Ryan. And if you guys have not seen that podcast, I will encourage it a little bit later on in the show. You definitely want to, but we'll tease that out. And then lastly, and not least, we did our first Sunday conversation, which happened over the weekend with JD Rivera. So if you guys didn't see that, you missed out on the story of a J6er. We're going to be profiling J6ers all week, all month long, rather. And because it's January 2025, we're going to go back 4 years in time, and we're going to talk to J6ers. And I got a couple of them. I got another one scheduled that I'm going to be taping tomorrow. So we're going to have nothing but January 6ers, stories that needed to be told that many of you have not heard. Before we get into today's podcast, which is going to be dense and significantly full of information, let's go ahead and say thanks to a sponsor. They're the ones that keep us on the air, along with you guys and your support. So here we go. We're going to say thanks today to our friends over at The Wellness Company. It's twc.health/Kyle, as you see on the screen. Anish Kumar Jha, a former Biden administration COVID-19 response coordinator, recently gave a chilling speech at the University of Michigan at the Public School of Health. Warned of a new age of pandemics fueled by bioweapon development, natural threats. We're kind of worried about these things as we see terrorist attacks right now. Called for a massive investment in vaccines against pathogens that don't even exist yet, and urged on a war against so-called misinformation. Probably what they see on our show here. The question you need to ask is, who's making the bioweapons? How many labs are out there globally? Yes, Trump got the win. Yes, he is about to be certified today, but there's still evil lurking in the background. So you should always be prepared so you don't have to repair. The Wellness Company that has the Contagion Emergency Kit. It's engineered by folks like Dr. Peter McCullough and the medical board over at TWC. This includes 5 critical life-saving medications like ivermectin, Tamiflu, a nebulizer, hydroxychloroquine, things that every household can now have access to because they are hard to get sometimes from a physician that doesn't agree. You can get rid of the red tape. It's very simple. You fill out a digital intake form. Your kid arrives in 1 to 2 weeks. And you don't have to wait for the deep state to put their plans into action. You guys stay ready for the unexpected. Head to twc.health/Kyle. Again, it's twc.health/Kyle. Use that promo code KYLE. Save yourself up to $32 off, plus free shipping. Kits are only available in the United States. There's always a link in the show description. We'll put it in the comments as well so you guys can find it very easily. Just be ready. All right, let's get into it. Let's take a deep breath. Here we go. Oh, man. Okay, so let's get started with the dumb stuff first, shall we? Dumb stuff first. Johnson retains the gavel. Yeah, that's not that exciting to me for some reason. I don't know why I don't feel excited, but maybe it's because I'm just not enthusiastic about Mike Johnson. He had a dramatic re-election as the speaker as 2 GOP hardliners switched votes. Republicans who were holdouts after phone calls from Donald Trump changed their mind, decided, hey, Donald Trump's agenda is more important than sort of like worrying about whether we like this nerdy guy who has done a mediocre job. I think it's been my take. They allowed a lot of movement on things that were still problematic. Johnson seemed like he was easily susceptible to sort of, deep state, administrative state movement. He was behind the FISA 702. We heard that he went into the SCIF last year and came out a changed man and decided to change his opinion on things. I don't like any of that. A razor-thin margin putting him back into the speakership. At the end of the day, the key is, and probably the optimistic thing, it's kind of a lesser of two evils, as Steve Friend and I talked about the other day. You don't have to love the guy. I don't love any of the speakers so far that we've seen in quite a while. These people are always going to have to appeal to folks in the middle, sort of the rhino-looking Republicans. They're also going to go after the people on the outside. But the key is can they move the agenda forward? You're going to need somebody in there to be able to certify Donald Trump. And so they got that done. So I guess kudos for an expected but not particularly exciting victory for the Republicans. Speaking of things that are kind of expected, not very exciting, actually more on the pathetic line, let's go ahead and cover over to this the thumbnail today, which has Hillary Clinton receiving the Presidential Medal of Freedom. It is the so-called highest civilian honor. It is only something that is exciting to news organizations that get to report on the highest civilian honor. Is there really anything honorable about the people that get it? Sometimes, like Denzel Washington got it. He seems like a really nice man, like a man who follows God and uses his platform for good, has a lot of good messages for young people. Seems like a man who embraces personal responsibility. Is he honored as like one of the most important people in America? No. How about Bono? How about this guy? Bono, Michael J. Fox, Hillary Clinton, George Soros. Part of this is just kind of slapping us in the face, the Presidential Medal of Freedom. But I don't want people to get wrapped too around the axle. It's actually worth stating they're just not that big of a deal. And so I went through, there's a Wikipedia page. You can go find the list of how many have been awarded and to whom. And if you're so inclined, I will obviously include it in our local show or our local sort of links for the morning. This is part of my background research. This thing was let's see, it was put into play in 1963? 31 recipients to be awarded in 1963. JFK had 31, whatever. They break it down by president. Okay. And they're Nobel Prize winners, and they're people that you've never heard of, and they're scientists, and they're philosophers, and they're people that make big donations, and so on and so forth. You've got a photographer on here. You've got members of Congress that have retired. You go to LBJ, he gave out 58 in his 4 years, 31. Not including the 31 that JFK put out. Okay, so you got that. Nixon gave out 28. It's always fun to read these things. Ford, another 28 or so. These things got handed out by Jimmy Carter. Every president's been giving them out. 86 were given out by Ronald Reagan. This is not that exclusive of a club. In fact, most of you are probably a member of a more exclusive club than the Presidential Medal of Freedom club. I did want to kind of go to the Obama ones, though. I just feel like we should talk about those. He gave out 118. Of course he did, right? And he gave them out to like singers and actresses and dancers, people that you've never heard of. He gave one out to Stephen Hawkins. You've heard of Stephen Hawkins. He also gave one out to Chita Rivera, an actress and singer, whoever the heck that is. And it goes on and on. So the fact of the matter is that even though people are going to get really riled up, yes, is it a slap in the face that someone horrific like George Soros got it? And no, we didn't see police officers that saved people's lives. There was this movement online the other day that was saying, hey, what about that pizza delivery guy that ran into a house and pulled out like a young girl and dragged him out, at great risk to himself? Isn't that worthy of respect in America? Like men being men at the highest level? We call it the Super Bowl of masculinity, the day that you wake up, put on your pants like every other day, and then suddenly God taps you and says, here's an opportunity for you to step into the gap. Go be a man. Go put your life on the line. Maybe for someone you love, maybe for someone you've never even heard of before, simply because you're in the right spot. We like that. That's what we love here at the Kyle Seraphin Show. Like, I think the audience can agree. It's awesome when you see these people do it. And I mean awesome in the sense that you have to give a sense of awe, like, to the divine, that some people will step in and solve problems, whether it be putting down someone with a gun at a church or in a school, or whether someone's just going to run in and brave the elements. Do those people get Presidential Medal of Freedoms? No. Civil rights activists do, like George Soros again. That one's pretty funny. And George Soros is apparently not even going to step out of whatever sort of dark cave, like whatever the inverse of the bat cave is, whatever like the bad guys have. They sit in the villain cave. And they're petting their Persian cat. And so he sent his son, which is all kind of gross. I actually have footage. Why not? I have footage of Hillary Clinton I'm going to call this the consolation prize. So here's a reason to be not mad about the Presidential Medal of Freedom being given to this turd. And she's just awful. She's the most unlikable face. She has the most unlikable voice. She has the most unlikable ideas. And they cannot figure out why they lost. Good. Here's Hillary getting the consolation prize for failing at her dream of becoming president of the United States, breaking that glass ceiling for women, not because she's a woman, but because she's terrible, and Americans didn't want it. So enjoy your Presidential Medal of Freedom, along with Bill Nye, the science guy, and Ash Carter, the former Secretary of Defense who never served in the military. Here we go. Her face is poised like in this permanent like fake happy smile. I was looking at some of the other really impressive persons that just got it from Joe Biden's time. Anna Wintour, who's the chief editor of Vogue. Same thing. Hillary Clinton, former first lady, kind of all around witch. And that. Okay, so that's the story. Let's move on into terrorist stuff, because I just feel like that's just how 2025 is kicked off. 2025 has been the year of unexpected explosions and chaos. And so CNN is asking a question that all of us should ask. Actually, it's not a bad question, to be fair. I like to dunk on CNN for being lame. But why has ISIS not claimed the vehicle attack? Why didn't they step up and say, hey, this was our guy? They love to do that. They used to actually claim it when it wasn't their guy. They would just be like, oh, yeah, it was us. They would phone in the claim of responsibility for any terrorist attack. And then we'd be left wondering, was it ISIS? Was it not ISIS? I actually think this is just another piece of asymmetric warfare. Whether that's true or not, hard to say. The claim is that he was an ISIS supporter because there was the flag, that he was radicalized, that he had the, we all saw that sort of staged nonsense where a New York Post reporter got to walk through the house wearing her yoga pants, doing the thirst trap thing. If you guys watched our Friday program with Steve Friend, then you also saw that. If you didn't, you can go back and check it out. It's not going to be a wasted period of your time. But they're all out there trying to get ahead of this story and kind of talk about what it is. We've actually got a little piece. This guy's name is Lionel Mithril. So here's the thing. Lionel Mithril is a man who is in charge of the New Orleans field office. He is not the Pacifically girl, the girl who specifically didn't want you to walk on certain streets. The crazy thing is that his last name is Mithril. And so if anybody is sort of a Lord of the Rings type and you think that is a metal that's impermeable when turned into chainmail, yeah, that's the same name more or less. I reached out to a buddy who used to work under this guy's leadership in Washington, and he said, I originally thought it was a typo. I thought that I was starting to work at for a dwarven rock band, which is classic. If you knew this guy, you guys would understand. And he said that he's not a terrible person, but he's not particularly talented. He's a classic FBI executive, a blue flamer is what we call them, people who basically jump on the rocket ship, light the afterburner, and try to get their careers up to the top of the bureau as fast as possible. So they have absolutely minimal FBI experience on the investigative front. This guy has about 4 years of experience. We kind of covered this with Steve as well. About 4 years of experience when he was in St. Louis. And I looked through his bio, and while he was in St. Louis for those 4 years, and that's not a very long time to be doing anything, but, whatever, 4 years. He also had what we call collateral duties, and a significant number of them. He was a DT instructor, okay? He was a SWAT guy. He was a certified sniper. He just was apparently doing anything except doing his casework, which means it means what it means. This is kind of how it happens sometimes. He does happen to be a black guy. For some reason, FBI thinks they need to put black people in charge of places like Mobile, and they think that black people need to be in charge of New Orleans. I guess that's the legacy of Katrina. There weren't enough black leaders or something. This is sort of the thing. So here he is talking about it. I just wanted you to know he's apparently not a bad person. He does recognize that he's not a subject matter expert and that his entire job is to put people together that do decent work. So you have that going for you. If the best thing people can say to you is that you're not a terrible person, but you're not particularly good at your job, that's probably what you're about to see here. I will tell you what he is bad at: news conferences. He should never do another one. They should not let people like this out there. It's one of the things I've advised Kash Patel. Just stop with these people that have no business being in front of the camera. But I guess it looks okay. If that's what you're looking for. Here we go.
Today we want to focus on filling in some of the gaps and giving you a greater understanding of the planning that went into this horrible attack by Shamsud Din Jabbar. We are also sharing videos showing Jabbar placing the IEDs on Bourbon Street and videos he took as he plotted this hideous attack. Thanks to information provided by you, the public, this investigation is crossing state and international borders as our agents follow leads in Houston, Texas, Atlanta, Georgia, Tampa, Florida, and internationally.
Kind of the Howard Dean vibe. You remember when he was just like naming places on the map? I don't know why that was necessary. I don't know why this guy had to look down at a note card and read specifically the statement. But it's honestly, if you can't speak in front of the camera, maybe that's the best thing. They're just not broadly capable human beings. Doesn't mean they're bad people, but here's the timeline. Okay. This is as reported by ABC News. 2023, Jabbar goes to Egypt. He goes to Cairo per an FBI spokesperson. He went to Ontario, Canada as well, returned to the U.S. in July of 2023. They're trying to figure out who he met during his travels. So that's going to be a long and convoluted process, or really fast if they go out there and rip into his emails and stuff and find out who he coordinated with, which is probably never going to be reaching the light of day. October and November of 2024. So we just fast forward 18 months, basically. Prior to the New Year's Day attack, he made 2 trips into New Orleans on scouting, sort of like reconnaissance trips. During this time, he wore Meta glasses, which I guess is a big deal and sort of the thing that people are focusing on. He rolled in with these Meta glasses. This is what they look like. So you're seeing a very kind of crappy picture here on the screen with an FBI logo in the background. So this is obviously something they put out. Wore those glasses and recorded his trip in. Here's the weird thing. He didn't record the actual shooting and the event, which is something you might think that he would do. I guess, I don't know if you can directly stream off these glasses, if they're Wi-Fi compatible, if they'll hook up to a phone. So maybe one of you know, and you can put that down in the comments for me. But the funny thing that I remembered, because I had this little discussion with one of the big gun tubers online. If you've ever done podcasts, if you've ever recorded an interview, if you've ever been involved in a product review or posting a video online, I can almost guarantee you, if you've done it enough times, that at some point you will forget to hit record, or you will forget to activate the microphone, or you will not have the right camera lined up and you'll get the wrong stuff. So you won't be able to actually record the thing you do. The question was, how in the world did this guy record his reconnaissance trips but not record his actual shooting and, ramming down people and all that? And I'll say this is just kind of the snarky wit that exists inside my head. If you forget to record something of significance, it could happen. It generally only happens once, right? You will forever remember that you blew a couple of hours on a podcast, on a video, on something that you really put some time into that you didn't record and you were unable to show anything for your work. So that only happens about one time. Now, if that one time that you forget to record it, you get into a shootout with the police at the end of it and end up dead, there is no second chances for that. There's no mulligan when you get smoked by the cops and you decide to do a terrorist attack. So let me just throw that as a possible solution for why the guy did not record it. I'm always looking for the common sense. That seems pretty common sense to me. That doesn't mean that it's true. It just means that there's a probability that that is the case. Again, the FBI put the video out and you get to see him walking around, and he's basically just moving around through the French Quarter, trying to see where he might be going. More indications that he's kind of scouting out the area. I got the worst lessons coming out of New Orleans coming up next. The absolute worst take, and it's coming from one of the worst people. If Hillary Clinton just got the best consolation prize, this guy's getting promoted for being the worst, so we'll go there in just 1 second. Before we do, say thanks to my buddies over at Patriot Cooler. You probably see them on the wall over my shoulder. It is patriotcooler.com. That's the website. And if you want to find the Kyle Seraphin Show collection, where you can find one that has the flag on it like this one, man, I actually reached the right spot, or this one, which has our badge upside down. You can get a hot or cold tumbler. They're fantastic products. And here's the thing. They look so good that when you already have a bunch of them, and I do, because I've got the 30 ounce and I've got this, hold on, reach down here. I got the 40 ounce. This one's also got the badge on it, right? So I've got a 30, I've got a 40, and I'm like, yeah, that's all I need. And then my folks came to visit for the holidays, and they drive in before Christmas, and they've got the little 20 ounce ones. And I was like, man, those look really good. And the form factor is really nice and it fits really nicely. So I ended up buying more of them, just like many of you might have. If you guys are interested, you just go to patriotcoolers.com. You can also check out their coolers. Like, obviously, they make those as well. Their coolers are as good as anybody's, if not better. I think they have a much better form factor and design. If you're in the market for like a really high quality outdoor product that's going to last you for a long time from a really good company that's based out of Houston, Texas, they ship out of America. Like a lot of people, stuff is made overseas. There's no other way to do some of these things because of the way the EPA works. Maybe Trump will fix that. Check out patriotcoolers.com, promo code KYLE, save yourself 10%. And it is, if you spend $50, you're going to get free shipping. Okay, as promised, the worst. You can't make this stuff. I seriously, you cannot make this stuff up. Senator Adam Schiff, yes, now he's a senator, so that's great. He got this is the Peter principle, is it not? You screw up, move up. Adam Schiff says the New Orleans attack shows why Kash Patel should not be in charge of the FBI. I didn't even read this. I just know that we had to talk about it because I actually want to be surprised with the exciting things that he's going to say and the reasons why. He said it underscores why it's important to have an FBI director that has experience, has judgment, that has character, that will prioritize defending the country against the violence we saw in New Orleans or violence we saw on January 6th. Oh, it's always got to get there, doesn't it? Always got to get to January 6th. I got more of the January 6th stuff coming up, obviously, because they cannot help but realize that they lost. By the way, if we're going to have a profile with a guy named Sean Witzman, who's been on the program before, but I kind of wanted to do a year in review or 4 years in review, let's say. He was there on the Capitol on January 6th, 2021. And yesterday he made maybe the funniest social media post of the day that none of you saw. So if you're not following Sean Witzman, I'll share it again today on X, and you need to follow Sean. If nothing else, for the sick, weird sense of humor. He said, remember, it is the eve of January 6th. Don't forget to put out a big glass of vodka and a plate of chicken bones for Nancy Pelosi. And every single one of you, when I said that, just imagine drunken Nancy drinking a huge glass of clear liquid that is intoxicating, and you're wondering, what does she do with the chicken bones? And I don't know either. She might cast them on the floor, like my wife suggested, try to read the ruins and find out what's going on. She might gnaw on them to sharpen her teeth, which continued that clack inside of her mouth. Maybe she just puts them in her fingers and pretends to have bonier fingers. I don't know. I don't know what Nancy Pelosi does with the chicken bones. But if you guys did not leave out chicken bones and vodka for Nancy Pelosi last night, you blew it. You blew it because this is an American holiday, January 6th. Okay, again, we can't have Kash Patel because of that. We need people that have judgment and character and care about stopping violence. You know, kind of like a guy who has worked in both the prosecutor's chair, who worked in the counterterrorism end of the world, who worked over at DOD. Yeah, like that guy. Someone who's done more for the country than Adam Schiff, that's for sure. Also, Somebody made an argument about how he's an interesting character simply because he loves hockey. I found this in a sort of a left-wing rag. They were like, he's kind of interesting to us as leftists because he likes hockey, and hockey is one sport, and it's like one of the few sports where you can almost guarantee where it's actually encouraged that the players are going to smash each other in the face with their fists. Like, I don't know what that means. I don't know why. I was reading it and I was like, I don't understand the point, but I do like that Kash Patel is physically more fit, capable, stronger, bigger, and like a regular dude who wears a hoodie, unlike the current resident there who's been bubble wrapped up, who came in, wanted to be part of an administration simply for the title, and has been flying around like he's a politically appointed prince. Throwback to one of our first episodes that we ever did, a guy who runs around in a $60 million jet. Let me tell you a reason why I think Kash Patel is the guy in this place and what Chris Wray has failed to do. We've been watching the jet, the infamous jet that Chris Wray flies around the country in. We've been keeping an eye on it to see, did he go down to New Orleans? Did he fly out to Las Vegas? Where is he in this situation? Because they gave him credit in that lefty rag the other day on MSNBC. They gave him credit for specifically deciding. I know, I got to stop with it. They gave him credit for being the one who declared this a terrorist attack. You know, because it's really, really hard to do that when some guy drives into a bunch of people in the middle of a New Year's Eve frolic with an ISIS flag on the back of his truck. That's hard to do. And so thankfully, we have such highly qualified attorneys who may or may not have been involved in solving the scandalous situation called Bridgegate for Chris Christie, a man who has his own gravitational field. Amazing, brave, and stunning work by Chris Wray. The jet hasn't left Manassas. It's still hanging out up there. Yes, it's a Gulfstream 550. Do you know what the purpose of that Gulfstream is? Do you know why it was bought for $60 million of U.S. taxpayer money? Why it was funded by our Congress? It's very simple. For counter-terrorism responses. And that could mean a bunch of things. It could mean that you throw an HRT team on there, although they have their own jets as well. You could throw them on there and fly them out fast and quick and put them into a situation to deploy. You could fly out an evidence response team, which is based in Fredericksburg, Virginia. The FBI has a national evidence response team that kind of like dances between Fredericksburg and Quantico. I've been down. The facility is called ORD, I want to say. I don't know why, but that's what it's called. They've got another one that's down in Richmond where they have all these types of equipments and they've got gathering. And we want to add a little bit to what Steve and I talked about the other day. One of the things that was the most bizarre, the strangest thing about that walkthrough with the thirst trap girl wearing the yoga pants was like, how in the world did they get a typed up, perfectly printed inventory receipt of all the things they took from this guy, whatever his name is, Jabbar? How did they get that? I've never seen it. So I reached out to some people. You guys, you know, I'll give you information that I know, and then I'll go out and see if anybody knows otherwise, because that's what we do here. And I know enough FBI and former FBI people to ask. And the fact of the matter is that team, which is based in Fredericksburg and or Quantico, depends on kind of where they come out, those people in the evidence response team can fly out, and they have all kinds of specialized evidence collection equipment for the national team. And they're very professional. And one of my buddies said, I used to use them all the time whenever I could. One, they were underutilized. Two, when you fly them out, they do everything really well. It's their full-time gig. And so they do things by the book, and they have tools no one else has, including mobile printers, which, by the way, a mobile printer, like your realtor has a mobile printer, or at least used to. It's not actually that uncommon. It's probably like a $100 to $200 investment. I just never saw the FBI do it because the FBI kind of does like the lowest common denominator. And by the way, we have those multiple forms. So why not, press hard 3 copies kind of thing. And that's how you normally do evidence collection. But a friend of mine told me, absolutely. Yeah, you fly out the evidence response team. They're called ERT, or the national level of ERT. You put them on the scene and they're going to leave you a very nice, very organized, typed up, inventory receipt. And they can have unlimited copies. It's super easy. And they got a digital version of it that they can update for later. So very possible that's what happened. No big deal. I like it. I like knowing that I'm sometimes wrong. The same person that shared that with me also shared this following article. Stand by for something that is not going to surprise any of you. But it might surprise Adam Schiff. The so-called rank-and-file FBI agents, let's call that the GS-13 to GS-14 level. These are the brick agents and the first-line supervisors. They are dismayed, embarrassed, and ashamed of the Bureau's handling of the New Orleans terror attack, starting right up in front with a woman wearing a fleece with a nose ring who said specifically, as covered in extreme detail by myself and Steve Friend the day before the last podcast. This is written by Carrie Pickett. Now, here's the thing. I know Carrie Pickett, or at least I've talked to her a bunch of times. I also know some of her sources. These are real. I've heard this from more than one person. I love that she writes it up in a national news story. Here's what it says. FBI agents say the Bureau's first response of the New Year's Day terrorist massacre in the New Orleans French Quarter was disastrous and yet another reason why the Senate cannot move fast enough to confirm President-elect Donald Trump's pick to run the agency. According to several agents who spoke on the condition of anonymity, the FBI failed to execute a comprehensive counterterrorism plan when, here's these names. This is fun. Samsud Din Bahar Jabbar of Texas, an Army veteran, rammed his pickup truck with the ISIS flag that Chris Wray bravely called terrorism into New Year's Eve revelers, killing 14. The quotes here cannot be left out. All right, here's an agent saying this, referring to Trump's nominee for FBI director and talking about the folks that are running the show right now. They need to go right now. Not only Wray, but Abate, that's Paul Abate, the deputy director, needs to go. This is awful. This is embarrassing. Kash Patel's the only person to have in there. And he needs to get in there right now, right away, because these people have to leave. I'm telling you, there's a small current of people that are suddenly feeling a lot braver. How do I know? Some of them are reaching out for the first time in years to say hey to us. This is all in response to this woman who is the ASAC, also known as the special agent in charge. That's going to be like the number 2, but it's actually the number 2 tier. Most field offices are run by what's called the special agent in charge, or the SAC. That person's the number 1. Underneath, you might have 1, 2, even 3 SACs, with the exception of like the really big field offices. You get 3 of these ASACs, and they focus on different things. One might handle like administrative stuff. The other one might handle all national security. And then the last one will do like criminal and cyber. That's kind of how this kind of breaks down. She was one of them. Supposedly, she was the one that actually had the counterterrorism, the national security billet. And she showed up wearing a blue polo shirt, a nose ring. Her name is Aletha Duncan. And again, she specifically said a bunch of really dumb things, which is a shame, and also declared that it wasn't a terrorist attack right after people said it was. So that's covered in here. Here's an FBI agent saying the new FBI. This is something that I have been saying for a while. So this is good to see that other like completely random people I've never met have said this. The new FBI management has to put in basic decorum rules because the Bureau should look like Men in Black, that they're all in uniform, that they're transparent. You have to be able to see the Bureau. I did this on Kimberly Guilfoy's show the other day. I said, look, nobody wants the FBI showing up at their door. Least of all me, by the way. But if the FBI does show up at my door, or if members of the FBI, more accurately, show up, they knock on the door. What do I want to see? I want to see a suit. I want the roast beef. That's when they throw the credentials at you without asking. I want you to identify yourself. I want you to put it up in my face and say, this is who I am, and here's why I'm there. And then I can close the door. Why? Because we listen to the Kyle Seraphin Show, and when you do, you know that the rules are A, B, C, D. Right? A, B, C, D. The FBI shows up. Always be closing the door. Ask for a business card. Thanks so much for coming. We're not going to talk to you, but you better be in a suit. And you won't be embarrassed. They won't be embarrassed. They'll come up. Here's who I am. I'm Special Agent so-and-so. I'm with the so-and-so field office. I had a couple questions for you. Would you be willing to talk to me? No, I would not. Okay, thanks so much. Listen, here is my business card if you change your mind. And then you can reach out to an attorney and find out what's up. That's the right answer. Why are we not leading with this? Americans expect it. It's not actually that hard. It's a good expectation. If you guys want to hear the story of the roast beef, you'll have to ask another time. We'll do it another time. But the roast beef is a classic New York story that has made it out there. When somebody preemptively hits you with the credentials, we call it roast beefing them, or at least some people do. The OG guys do. And I think it's perfect. It actually is a good tradition. Because you should be transparent. When a police officer comes to the door in uniform, they have their name and their badge number up front. They have a body cam that is recording the interaction. We expect that. This is a time when we expect transparency. The FBI lost their ability to move in sort of this low visibility way and chill and wear a bunch of like flannel shirts. I actually got flannel shirts for Christmas, and I was telling my mother, I said, look, and yes, my mother still buys me shirts for Christmas. I said, look, I don't need flannel shirts. I'm not trying to do Fed stuff. I need monocolored, beautiful sweaters or something. Seriously. Okay, so here's another agent saying the same. Some of these things are just out, like they're outstanding. This is maybe the most critical thing. I've dropped this on Sean Ryan the other day too. And I don't mean this in a funny way, although it is funny. Quote, if it ain't terrorism unless they have a MAGA hat on. Isn't that the truth in a post-January 6, 2021 world? Here's the rest of the quote. For the last 3 years, all of the new agents, that's all they know. They're going after the right wing or Trump supporters. It is endemic with the headquarters folks. This is all they know. That is exactly correct. This is the problem with today's FBI. This is the problem with ideological capture. This is what happens when you get people who already know the answer, even though the question hasn't been asked, because they are going to come and find it. It's the thing that I said in my first interview that I sat down with Dan Bongino. We are now dealing with a Stalinistic, Soviet style, you show me the man is wearing a MAGA hat, and I will find you the crime. Is it everybody? No, it's not. It's just the people making the decisions and the people that are following the decisions. This is why Kash Patel can't come soon enough for some of us. It needs to be stopped. And by the way, the left should want this too. Do you really want an organization that serves at the like theoretically the highest level of national federal law enforcement? Do you really want them just swaying with the wind, picking whoever's the occupant of the White House and going with their politics? That's horrific. That's the worst possibility. We know that already happened. We know the media has been pushing it. You can't help but see it. And it's kind of gross. It should be gross for them. It's not gross to them. They continue to just double down on this stuff. They won't stop. I'm going to tell you how funny it gets. Of course, we're going to go and start. My first pick of the day is always CNN. So we're going to start there next and we're going to get into it. Then we'll do Cybertruck and we're getting into a little bit more. First, I want to say thanks to my buddies over at Shield Arms and give you a recommendation. I actually have to get tickets to SHOT Show. I got to go because they sent me tickets to go join them at SHOT Show. Folks, if you guys want to pick out a fantastic firearm or accessories for a Glock, if you are the kind of person that carry a Glock 43, a 43X, a 48, if you like a smaller pistol because you're not serving every day in law enforcement, maybe you have one that you keep for deep visibility if you are in law enforcement, they're reliable pistols. I think the FBI did tests on them and found they could do like 135,000 rounds before they had a jam with just basic maintenance and cleaning. You can wear out the springs before you're going to have a problem. Check out Shield Arms. They make some of the best accessories for Glocks. I just gave them to my dad for Christmas. He got a little magazine well thing, so it's going to make him be able to load faster. It's got the steel mags that they have, what are called the S15. It allows you to put 15 rounds in the same size that you would normally be able to put 10 in from the factory. So you can get 50% more rounds in. That means 50% more chances to hit a target or deal with bad guys who are trying to maybe drive a truck into you or try to come in and blow something up in front of you while you're at the hotel. I don't know. Check out Shield Arms. You need to be a responsible carrier, and it's always better to carry more rounds than less. No one's ever said, oh, I wish I had less rounds when I was in a firefight. Guaranteed, Shield Arms is a way you can do it. They also make a folding AR. By the way, I got one coming in from them that is pretty awesome looking. I've already seen the groups. They're tuning my gun, and they're Cerakoting it today. So it is promo code KYLE, KYLE. Save yourself 10% site-wide on all their stuff. I think it includes firearms still. If it doesn't, let me know. But it did last time, and it's pretty awesome. They make good stuff. You ready? Here's CNN. The message Trump sends by inciting a riot and then regaining power. Double down on stupid. Double down on never forget that Donald Trump is a very, very bad man. They just can't help themselves. This is, who's writing this? Oh, it's Stephen Collinson. Yeah, that's what I thought. Late on a day of chaos and blood. If you ever want to be a serious journalist, let me just take a drink of coffee here because I know this is going to get emotional. If you ever want to be a serious journalist, make sure you always start on a day of chaos and blood in your first sentence, if possible. January 6, 2021. It was unimaginable that Donald Trump, who summoned a mob to Washington, D.C. and told the crowd to fight like hell, but also to peacefully and patriotically let their voices be heard, which is always ignored, would get anywhere near the presidency again. Isn't it funny how selective these people are? Got into a discussion last night, like at midnight, which is how late I was up last night. I was up after that, talking to a journalist who was really mad that Sean Ryan and Sam Shoemate and producer Jeremy over there at the Sean Ryan Show did not properly format according to the media's standard, which he referred to as a legal standard. He was very upset. They didn't format an email, which we're going to cover in just a second. And it's like, look, man, there is no legal format for media to put their stuff out there. The legacy media is dead. And this is reasons why, right here. This nonsensical, avoiding all the truth because it's not convenient for my narrative, as my father likes to say, a guy who was in news for before I was born, and for a longer time than you guys, many of you have been on the planet. It's real simple. Don't confuse me with the facts. I already have an opinion. That is a Charlie Seraphin original quote, something that I have grown up knowing. Don't confuse me with the facts. I already have a belief system. I don't want to be taken off that. I know it was a day of chaos and blood. And so here he is saying about that 4 years later. What does it say that we're going to let Donald Trump come back in? What it says is that that day was not what you thought it was. What it tells us, most of us who are listening, was that there was some shenanigans, an awful lot of them, and that Donald Trump came back to win more. It could be one of two things. It could be that Joe Biden actually won. That's a possibility, right? Let's just open it up to the realm of possibility. Let's say Joe Biden won. He did such a crap job in charge of this country that more Americans than before stepped up and brought Donald Trump back after everything they did to discredit him. Everything. And that stuff's not over yet, folks. It's really not. Donald Trump's not out of the woods. This country's not out of the woods. We're actually just getting started right now. If you think that New Year's Day was a one-off, I don't want to ruin anybody's day, but we're going to get into some highly unusual and strange things. This is going to be an ugly year. Look at the screen right now. Who's reporting this? What organization is this? I feel like it's one of the hard lefties. Is it CBS? Yeah, I think so. Trump to be sentenced for his conviction in the New York hush money case before the inauguration. All right. They'll certify today, assuming that everything goes the way it's supposed to go. Assuming it went the way that it did last time. They'll certify today. And then on the 10th, the judge in the hush money case in New York, that thing where they had to extend statutes and bring in like a bunch of weirdness and talk about Stormy Daniels, a prostitute / porn star or whatever the heck she is, whatever you want to call someone who has sex on camera for money, that person, she got hushed up, right? And because they paid off money, $130,000 under supposedly a fraudulent business deal, and I don't know who it hurt, that situation is going to also result in now a sentencing. And the judge is going to have to decide what's going to happen next. I don't think we've ever seen anything I don't even think we can imagine anything like this before. And we haven't even gotten started. That's January 10th, 10 days before the inauguration. So when will that sentence be carried out? And what will it look like? Are they going to go, hey, we probably extended? Are they going to say, here's the sentence, but we're going to delay it based on the fact that there's appeals going on? He can't pardon himself out of this. They always wanted to have a security posture. I mean, is there a small possibility? I think it's totally unlikely, but there's a tiny, tiny possibility that Donald Trump is supposedly pulled off into prison for this stuff before the inauguration. Theoretically, a judge could argue that. I don't know what would happen next then. I don't even want to imagine how dumb this would get. But we're not out of the woods yet. So, trucks blowing up, guys driving into New Year's crowds. That is the perfect start, unfortunately, a horrible start, but the perfect start to what we're going to see in this year. There you go. This is a little bit more sober take on it. Is it really though? Who's sharing this one here? This is not CNN. This is CBS News. 4 years after the Capitol attack, January 6 cases hang in the balance with Trump pardons on the horizon. Yeah, the question of pardons came up this weekend. I'm going to actually give you the teaser because I want to make sure that you guys do get a chance to hear it. If you are familiar with our program, then you already know this. If you're new here, I want you to be aware that one of the things that we're just starting, and we used to do it a lot, and it got really kind of difficult, and I've decided to just throw my time into it again. We're going to do long-form interviews. My interviews go as long as they need to. I have no idea how long they're going to last. They last as long as it makes sense to tell the story. Here's kind of a quick little tease of JD Rivera. I'll probably cut away from it in a second, but I'm teasing my own video because I do want you guys to see it. It's episode 458. JD Rivera, he's a Marine, he's a husband, he's a father, he's a J6er. He was a journalist on that day, and he served time in prison. But he's a lot more than a man who just did something for 30 minutes. And so many of these other people out there that are waiting for pardons, there's a lot of human story here. And so 4 years later on the day of, this seems really fitting. This is now, I guess I'll call him my friend because I feel a lot of kinship with a man who went through the stuff that he did. Here's JD.
I was literally in 3 different explosions. So the first one, I was in a tower. Our tower got hit by a rocket, but I was outside when a mortar went off. So not sure if it was a pressure plate one that was old. We don't know. That was again, another, for me, God moment, because my truck was devastated. It rattled my brain. It made me think about stuff a little differently. Because that was the closest one. I do call myself a J6er. I was one of the original J6ers. I was arrested on Inauguration Day, January 20th, 2021. So the first person in Florida arrested. And then I believe I was the first person to go to trial on misdemeanors, to actually go to trial and not take a plea deal.
And that means he also was convicted. Folks, you can see the teaser on the timeline. You can also find the episode either on Rumble. You can find it on, I think it's my pinned tweet right now over on X. You can also find it on YouTube. And you can even find it over on our locals channel, which is it's KyleSeraphin.com. There's a longer version of the name, but you might as well check it out there. Make sure while you're thinking about it right now, if you're sitting over there in the live chat, make sure you are liking this video. Make sure you have subscribed to the channel, wherever it is you're listening to it. Make sure you've turned on the notifications if you want to see when we go live, which is at 0930 Eastern Time every weekday, and then now Sundays as well. We're giving you that long form conversation where you can go check that stuff out. So by all means do that, and we do appreciate it. I do appreciate it. It's just me over here. I don't know why I say we sometimes. So let's do the weird thing. First of all, again, they're still in on this. There's multiple stories talking about it. Joe Biden can't help it. He's saying we shouldn't forget the Capitol attack, but there won't be a repeat. Why? Because suddenly they realize that they need to secure everything. January 6th, for better or for worse, it definitely did change the way that the conversation could happen. I think that we've learned a lot. We have a lot of distrust. I think that some of the things that we've seen is that a lot of people made a lot of money on this. We're being totally honest. A lot of people made a journalistic reputation. People on the political left, they've written books about it. People on the right as well. Folks like Julie Kelly, okay, they've gone after this. Darren Beatty. I don't have a huge problem with all of it, but I do think that when you have folks that are not particularly educated on how things work in government because they've never done it, and they've never actually talked to enough law enforcement people to really grasp it. If you're over there talking about a Fedsurrection, I think more likely than not, and we do talk about this stuff. The next one I've got coming up with Steve Baker, who's dropping some things today. I think it's much bigger than that. You don't need the government to have a conspiracy. In fact, most conspiracies don't involve the government at all. There are plenty of nefarious actors that are politically involved. Actually, there's a little take that I have. I didn't know when I was going to work this in. This is the Prime Minister of England talking about when politicians lie, it affects politics. That would be actually like the funniest little like light version of what happened on January 6th. When people say things false. And this, we should actually add media to the politician thing. Here is, again, the Prime Minister of England, which is Facebook in real life, where school marms come in and they can actually take you to jail if you have the wrong opinion. It's just worth hearing that these people, they're so disconnected with reality that they're going to say something that every American and probably every Brit citizen also knows.
And when politicians, and I mean politicians, who sat in government for many years, are casual about honesty, decency, truth, and the rule of law, calling for inquiries because they want to jump on a bandwagon of the far right, then that affects politics.
Yeah, sod off, you wanker. I don't know what I want to say to him, but I don't like it. Yeah, so they're talking there about the rape gangs, the grooming gangs, something that my wife was like tracking a long, long time ago. Stories of people like Tommy Robinson. We have the book Easy Meat at home. I was talking about this. I mean, this was household conversation for us years ago, and now it's suddenly coming back into focus, which is kind of interesting. Again, a lot of these things are coming back into focus simply because people are focusing on things that are true, and they're getting a chance to now go, hey, we're going to talk about this. A lot of it is because X is more open, so that'll transition into the thing. Did a long X space, talk with Sean Ryan and some of the folks. We talked to Sam Shoemate, who is a retired analyst from the Army, intelligence officer, and they were talking about the situation that happened with the Cybertruck. The Green Beret, who supposedly blew up. A lot of conspiracy around this. A lot of people trying to wrap their heads around it. I want to kind of make as much sense as I can of what happened, because the most likely thing involves a breakdown of mental illness or a momentary lapse, a mental break, somebody who had a lot of burdens emotionally and then those overcame them. That could happen to anybody. If you've ever been around someone who's committed suicide, and that is a really tough thing to do, if you've ever had a friend or a family member or a close acquaintance or a coworker who has decided to kill themselves, this is not something that you can always predict. There are basically two ways people do it, and I'm being very, very broad here. Obviously, the mental health field is enormous. But some people give you a lot of outward signs, and those people are hoping that someone will intervene. At least we think they are. And some people, they disguise it, and they carry a burden that you cannot see, and on one day, the demon that they're fighting wins, and they do something that they can't take back. And I've had people within my orbit. It is a thing that bothers me. It is something that happens in the special operations community a lot, far more frequently than in other communities. It's incredibly difficult to watch this. So the story is that a Green Beret with 19 years of experience who was working towards transitioning to retirement, an 18 Zulu, which is a team sergeant, that is like the non-commissioned leader of an ODA, the operational use or the operational unit of the special forces teams, that this guy basically snapped. That he started doing some things. He may have been seeing some ghosts, but he also reached out to some folks. And before he killed himself in Las Vegas, he sent off some emails with some really wild allegations. And the question was, what do you do with that? I want to tell you that Sean Ryan did an emergency episode, which I'm going to show you kind of the teaser of it. I highly encourage you to sit and watch at least the first 40 minutes of it. You can watch all of it. You're not going to be losing any time. You're going to see a profile from a guy who did not want to come forward. And I empathize with this so much. On Thursday morning of last week, I talked to Sam Shoemate, who was interviewed by Sean Ryan. Sam connected to me from another person that was on our podcast, Rob Green. This podcast does a lot of really interesting stuff, and we hit way above our weight for who we are and for the size of the audience that we have. So consider yourself like in the know, and just pat yourself on the back. It's because you guys are out here consuming this. It allows me to keep doing it. Sam reached out, asked me for a conduit, a way to get to the FBI. I didn't ask for what he was going to send. That's none of my business. I do this fairly frequently, folks. If people want to connect with someone in the FBI and they have something they need to pass along, I'm more than happy to be a conduit for it. And I don't need to ever see it. That's not my job. I don't vet it. But here's the deal. When a guy who spent 19 years in the Army, who left because of COVID vaccines and coordinates whistleblowers, decides to bring something to the FBI, I just want you to consider the odds of that thing being a hoax and him knowing about it and then committing a felony by doing so, it's very, very small. So I want you to consider how credible it is for someone to reach out proactively and not just send it off into the NTOC, the National Tactical Operations Center in West Virginia, where they take the tips, but reach out to a former FBI agent knowing that I will make a positive connection with somebody in the FBI's field office. And in fact, we got it to the squad supervisor running the terrorism case, which is what they're running it under, or running this investigation in Las Vegas. This went directly into the hands of the investigators. Now, we also had some really weird stuff that we found out afterward. You guys might as well listen to the space last night because it was 2 hours. So I'm giving you 3 hours worth of homework in addition to our long interview. Look, if you're driving around and you got some time this week, you can listen to our JD Rivera interview. You can listen to the Sean Ryan podcast, which you should. Even if you don't normally listen to Sean, if that's normally not the kind of thing that you want to hear, this is really relevant and critical. It's probably one of the bigger stories in the news at the moment. And then you can also listen to the Twitter Space, which I'll put a link to over on Locals as well. You guys should listen to that. It's 2 hours of people coming in. There's a couple Green Berets that are talking about Green Beret culture and what goes on there. You're hearing from Sam Shoemate directly. You're hearing from Jeremy, who's the producer of the Sean Ryan Show, Sean himself. I got a chance to be on the stage there. We actually picked up like 6,000 or 7,000 followers in the last 24 hours. Very wild, just turn of events. Anyway, here's the sort of the tease out of what it was. And then I want to get into the letter before we kind of wrap up here, because the letter itself is actually worth discussing for what it is and what it is not.
Hey, what's up? We're doing an emergency episode here with Sam Shoemate, former intelligence analyst. And we are covering the Green Beret that bombed Trump Hotel in Vegas. Sam received an email from the Green Beret in kind of like a manifesto. A little nervous to do this one, but here we go. It'll be out later today. Stay tuned.
So you guys can go and find that. It's pretty easy to find. It should be pinned over. You can watch it on X. You can watch it over on Spotify or whatever else. Subscribe to us if you're on Spotify as well. Here's the email, in most of it, at least. It has a couple of really wild claims. One of them is about gravitonic drives and some of the an explanation of what was going on with the drones, the fact that they are Chinese and coming out of a submarine. No way to validate that, not with what we know. So just take that for whatever it's worth. There were people saying that this guy did not have enough background in drones to be able to make that statement, including Green Berets, talking about his billet, the responsibilities for being a 1st Battalion, 10th Special Forces Group guy. That all made sense to me. I totally understand it. He also makes an allegation that he's trying to expose some war crimes. That seems troubling. Might be true, might be imagined. The events at least sort of check out, it seems like. Some of the names that were mentioned in the email check out, but that doesn't mean that someone didn't have a complete crack and a break and have just imagined some things. This happens, and it's really one of the saddest things that can happen out there. Also, allegations that the Iranians have been moving some things in to the United States. So there's that. I'm sorry, that was made in the podcast. Long and short, some of this stuff can be validated. Some of this stuff will never be validated. It's certainly not going to be confirmed. But what I did see was this email and then what the FBI released in Las Vegas saying this is the writings that we found on the guy's phone. And again, there's 2 hours of this, so we're not going to be able to cram it into a couple of minutes. All I can say is they don't look like the same person wrote that. Whoever wrote this email, whether it was Matt Berger, which is kind of a slang term that he went by, that you guys can go look it up, Livisberger. Whether it was Matt who wrote this or not, hard to say. It kind of doesn't matter. What I did see is that the FBI released something that is completely different, but the Bureau did in fact validate that this thing, at least they believe it was sent by the right guy. And if that's the case, mental illness is the highest possibility. It does shine a light on something that is very sad. It doesn't discredit Green Berets. It doesn't mean that they are not capable human beings. It doesn't mean that they are not some of the most heroic warriors out there. And if you read the book, which is called, I think it's called Chosen Warrior. God, it's been a while since I've read it. It was written by Dick Couch, so you guys can verify if it's right. I know the word chosen is in it. Chosen Soldier, I think is what it's called. It's the story of a Navy SEAL, guy with the trident, going through the Q course and documenting the life and the experiences, I think including Tim Kennedy, if memory serves, of Green Berets training to be that. And he said they're the most potent weapon on the battlefield in the human context. I think that's true. So whether this is an effort to discredit Green Berets or not by some foreign intelligence power, I just don't think it'll do it. If you know anything about Green Berets, if you know anything about Special Forces, they're like a really incredible group of people. They don't have to be the smartest people in the world, although they oftentimes are very, very articulate, intelligent. They have interesting backgrounds. They come from all over America. They tend to be incredibly loyal to the United States. I had the pleasure of performing the wedding of one down at Fort Bragg or outside of Fort Bragg. I have another that was my partner in the FBI. I have a lot of love for Green Berets, the Special Forces community. So our heart really goes out to this guy. And one of the things that we have to remember at this moment, too, is when somebody does something like this, it means that there may have been warning signs that they missed. And a lot of these guys are going to be kicking themselves that they didn't save their brother. It is not their fault. But just remember that if you got somebody in the community that you're aware of, they have a sick sense of humor, just like a lot of people that worked in this kind of space. So, be there. My buddy who, like I said, who was my partner in the Bureau, he sent me a picture of himself in front of a Cybertruck yesterday. That's kind of like the thing that they would do. And my response to him was, "Don't do it," which made him laugh. Everybody copes with grief in a different way. Everybody copes with just kind of the sadness of what happens. So I don't think there's more going on here than not, although we're open to finding out later. So just be aware. This is something that's happening out there. And again, I just gave you homework if you guys want to know the whole story on it. Let's see. I think I had one last thing to talk about. Maybe not. I think that's nice. We're kind of wrapping up in a nice space. I do have a fun little palette cleanse for you, so I will play that. Again, if you guys want to follow the program, and if you're new here, thank you for joining us. Thanks for giving us a chance with your morning. Make sure you've liked the video. You hit the thumbs up. It makes a difference. It boosts us in the algorithm. I don't like asking for it because it kind of bores me, but it is something we have to ask to do. You can find us over at Locals, which is KyleSeraphin.com. I always post all the articles that I read every morning, so if you want to read it yourself, you want to check my facts, that's how I do it. I also put over some interesting stuff on there. You can be a subscriber if you want to support what we do. And in doing so, you'll get some, behind the scenes access. Sometimes you'll also get access to the interviews before the interviews are released. So we do the Sunday conversations on Saturday for all of you that want to be part of it. And by the way, you guys are one of our biggest sponsors, which is awesome. Having an audience that's going to go do that. So again, big thank you. I'm going to play something because my audience has a very specific sense of humor. That's why you guys come here. This is that very specific sense of humor. I think most of you remember a simpler time, a time that was not digital, right? A lot of us remember a time that was a little bit lighter. It was a little bit easier. It was a time when people had roll down windows and they had manual transmissions, which you can't even find anymore. So I got a new vehicle over the last couple weeks, and it's really, really nice. It's the nicest thing that I've ever driven in. It's actually really exciting to sit in it for the first time. I'm not even a car guy. This reminds me that I used to have a 1991 F250 diesel, single cab, piece of garbage, all steel, manual windows with a 4 or 5 on the floor. And this guy kind of reminded me. So this is something a little throwback for some of us.
You ever notice how winding your window down by hand makes you look lower middle class? There's a cheap way to fix that. First of all, what you want to do is get the window winder right off there. Throw that away. Next, get yourself one of these battery-powered mixers, hand mixers in here. You ever notice on these how the blades go in opposite directions? Remember that. I'm going to be referring back to that later on. These are real cheap, especially if the blades are missing. Okay, now to wind the window up, all I do is stick one of these blade receptacles over the window winder shaft and then just hit the button. How do I wind it down? Well, that's where that reversing direction thing comes in that I was referring to earlier. I just pop that on.
It's so simple. Look how fast. By the way, that is scary fast. Have you ever seen the mechanism on the other side? If you guys actually know how windows wind down manually, if someone came down that fast with it, you're going to break the glass at some point. In any case, we are in a simpler time. We used to live in a simpler time, rather. We have a lot of amenities. We have a lot of complexities. Don't forget that with all the technologies and the things that solve problems, like rolling up our windows automatically, you just push the button once and it goes all the way up. Don't forget, there's a real human thing out there. And you might have somebody in your life who, just like this Green Beret, was suffering, carrying a burden. So go out there and interact with your human friends. Don't get an AI girlfriend yet, y'all. Just saying. Anyway, thanks so much for joining for the morning. I look forward to seeing you guys again tomorrow. I'm sure this week is going to be insane. I can't help but think it because it's already been a wild weekend walking right into it. God bless you. I'll see you again tomorrow morning, 0930, or we'll find you here on Apple, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and so on. Have a great day.
Thanks for listening to the Kyle Seraphin Show, streamed live weekdays on rumble.com/Kyle Seraphin. Follow Kyle on Twitter, Truth Social, and Instagram at Kyle Seraphin.